The silence in the Kepler station's medical bay was broken only by the rhythmic beeping of life support systems and the ragged breathing of Commander Jorek Vance as he drifted in and out of consciousness through the reinforced viewport. The wreckage of humanity's first deep space colony drifted like scattered bones against the star-filled twisted metal and frozen atmosphere crystals that had once been home to 12,000 souls. Dr. Alara Novak watched the biometric readings with growing unease. 3 weeks since the hegemony attack, and Vance remained the sole survivor pulled from the debris field. His body bore the telltale scarring of Velter energy weapons' geometric burns. That seemed to pulse with residual alien fury, but it wasn't his physical wounds that concerned her most. He's been speaking in his sleep again, Novak reported to Admiral Reese Caulfield over the secure channel. Not human languages. The linguistic AI can't parse it, but the phonetic patterns match recorded Velter dialects. Caulfield's weathered face tightened on the hologram. Impossible. No human has ever learned their language, the neural structure. Differences alone. Sir, I'm telling you what I've observed. Yesterday he requested water using what our xenolinguistics database confirms as proper high Velter syntax. When I asked him about it, he had no memory of speaking at all. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, studying reports on his own display. The Velter hegemony had swept through the outer colonies like a wildfire, reducing humanity's expansion efforts to ash in mere months. Their technology was decades beyond human capability. Their warriors bred for conquest across a dozen star systems. Earth's combined fleets had managed exactly 3 tactical victories against them costly Pyrrhic affairs that barely slowed their advance. Doctor, I need you to understand something, Caulfield said finally. The Joint Chiefs are convening tomorrow to discuss options. The hegemony fleet is 6 months out from the Sol system. We've exhausted conventional strategies. Novak felt eyes form in her stomach. She'd heard whispers about the Lazarus Protocol's theoretical frameworks for consciousness transfer, memory integration, neural hybridization, mad science that the Ethics Committee had buried in classified archives years ago. I'm not suggesting anything yet, but that man in there lived through something impossible. He survived when trained soldiers, hardened colonists, even children didn't make it out. I need to know why. On cue, Vance's eyes snapped open, pupils dilated and unfocused. His lips moved silently, forming words in that alien tongue again. Novak approached his bedside, medical scanner in hand, but froze when his gaze locked on hers. They're coming, he whispered in perfect, unaccented English. The Bloodsworn packs, 7 battle groups, with War Master Gorvik leading the fist of extinction. They mean to his expression twisted with confusion and pain. Why do I know that name? Why can I see their battle formations? Novak's scanner showed neural activity, unlike anything in medical literature, synaptic patterns firing in impossible configurations, creating new pathways in real time, as if his brain was being rewritten by something alien. Commander, I need you to tell me exactly what happened on Kepler Station, every detail you can remember. Vance's breathing quickened, and for a moment his eyes seemed to hold flecks of silver, the same metallic sheen she'd observed in Velter specimens. They didn't just kill us, Doctor. They fed on us. They're bioneural symbionts. They harvest memories, experiences, tactical knowledge. But something went wrong with me. Instead of just taking, it gave back. The implications hit her like a physical blow. If Vance had somehow absorbed Velter military intelligence, battle plans, even cultural understanding. Doctor, Vance continued, his voice carrying an undertone of barely controlled rage. I don't just know how they think. I know how they die. And I know exactly what it will take to make them pay for every human life they've stolen. The medical bay's lights flickered as if responding to the intensity in his words. And Novak realized she was looking at something unprecedented in human history. A man transformed by alien contact into something new, something dangerous, something that might just be humanity's last hope for survival. 6 weeks later, the testing facility deep beneath Luna's Tycho crater hummed with desperate activity. Commander Vance stood in the center of a holographic battlefield, his movements precise and predatory as he dissected Velter tactical formations with surgical accuracy. Strike here, he said, pointing to a seemingly insignificant cluster of ships in the enemy formation. The Velter organized their fleets around bioneural network hubs. Destroy the saptic commanders, and you fragment their entire coordination matrix. Admiral Caulfield watched from the observation deck, flanked by the heads of every military branch. The brass remained skeptical despite 3 weeks of uncanny accurate intelligence briefings. Humanity had fought the Velter for 2 years without understanding even basic elements of their command structure. Dr. Yuki Harimoto, head of xenobiology, leaned forward. Commander, you've identified 17 distinct hegemony ship classes that our databases have never cataloged. Where is this information coming from? Vance's expression flickered, a micro-expression of pain quickly suppressed. I dreamed there. Dreams, Doctor. I know the taste of victory on Proxima Colony because I've experienced it through Velter senses. I know the genetic markers they use to select breeding queens because their memories are threading through mine like parasites. That's impossible, interrupted General Marcus Webb, Strategic Command. Neural patterns can't cross species barriers. The brain chemistry alone. Show him. Caulfield ordered quietly. Vance nodded and closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they held the alien silver sheen more pronounced now, almost luminescent. When he spoke, the words emerged in the harsh, clicking cadences of high Velter. The translation scrolled across everyone's displays in real time. The prey species believes itself clever, but the hegemony has consumed 17 star systems. Their resistance patterns are already cataloged. Their hope is an illusion we permit them to maintain until the harvest. The room fell deadly silent. Vance blinked, and his eyes returned to their human brown. That was War Master Gorvak's personal assessment, recorded during the final assault. On Kepler Station, the bioneural simian that infected me was his personal command enhancement designed to store tactical data from conquered territories. General Webb's face had gone pale. You're saying you have access to their entire strategic database? More than that, I have access to their collective military consciousness. Every battle they've fought, every tactic they've employed, every weakness they've tried to hide. Vance's voice carried a cold fury that made the temperature in the room seem to drop. But General, there's something else you need to understand. The simian wasn't just storing their memories. It was preparing for something specific. Dr. Harimoto's instruments detected massive neural activity spikes. Commander, your brain chemistry is shifting again. I'm reading neurotransmitter levels that should be lethal. Earth, Vance interrupted, his voice taking on an otherworldly resonance. They're not coming here to conquer. They're coming to transform this system into a breeding ground for the next phase of hegemony expansion. Sol is geographically perfect for what they call the Great Spawning, the birth of a new warrior caste designed specifically to consume human neural patterns. Admiral Caulfield stood slowly. What are you telling? U.S. Commander? I'm telling you that in 4 months, when their fleet arrives, they won't just be seeking victory. They'll be seeking to turn humanity into the genetic foundation for weapons designed to consume the rest of the galaxy. Vance's hands clenched into fists. But I've learned something they didn't expect me to learn. The symbiont connection works both ways. The holographic display around him suddenly erupted with new information, detailed technical specifications for Velter weapons, bioship vulnerabilities, even personal profiles of enemy commanders. But more disturbing was the way Vance's own biometric readings were beginning to match patterns associated with Velter neurological enhancement. Dr. Harimoto, Caulfield said without taking his eyes off Vance, I need a full assessment of the commander's condition. Can he maintain human cognition while accessing this alien intelligence? Sir, I don't think that's the right question anymore. The real question is whether we can use this connection tactically before it kills him. She paused, studying readings that defied every principle of xenobiology, and whether we can replicate the process. Vance smiled, and for a moment it was a completely human expression filled with pain, determination, and barely controlled rage. Admiral, you're thinking too small. We don't need to replicate the process. We need to weaponize it. The Velter gave me access to their collective consciousness, but they never considered what would happen if that consciousness was exposed to the full weight of human hatred. What do you mean? I mean that every night, as I dream their dreams, they dream mine. Every memory of human suffering they've caused, every image of our dead colonies, every moment of human rage and determination is flooding back through their bioneural network like a virus. His eyes flashed silver again, and some of them are beginning to understand what they've awakened. The emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council convened in the war room beneath Geneva. Holographic displays casting harsh blue light across faces etched with desperation. Intelligence reports from the outer sensor rays confirmed humanity's worst fears. The Velter invasion fleet had accelerated their approach 3 months instead of 4. 17 dreadnoughts, 43 biocruisers, and over 200 support vessels. Admiral Caulfield reported, his voice steady despite the catastrophic numbers. Our combined fleet strength stands at 8 dreadnoughts, 26 heavy cruisers, and perhaps 60 destroyers capable of interstellar combat. Secretary General Elena Vasquez stared at the tactical display with the expression of someone calculating the death of her species. Our ground-based defense networks, orbital platforms might account for 10% of their fleet if we're extraordinarily lucky. The Velter bioships regenerate damage faster than our conventional weapons can inflict it. Commander Vance stood at the edge of the room, his presence both essential and unsettling. 3 months of integration with the alien symbiont had changed him visibly. His movements carried an inhuman precision, his eyes held permanent flecks of silver, and when he spoke about Velter tactics, his voice occasionally carried their clicking undertones. "There's another option," he said quietly, stepping forward. Every head in the room turned toward him. "But it requires abandoning every ethical principle we maintained about warfare." Dr. Novak, now leading the Xenobiology Integration Project, accessed her classified files. The neural pathway mapping is complete. We can replicate the symbiont connection, but the survival rate during integration is approximately 12%. 12% of what subject pool? Asked General Webb. "We've tested with volunteers from Special Forces units, pilots with exceptional neural plasticity, even some civilians with unique psychological profiles." Her voice carried the weight of necessary horrors. "Out of every 100 attempts, 12 subjects survived the initial integration. Of those, perhaps 3 maintained functional human cognition while accessing Velter tactical awareness." The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. To create enough hybrid conscious soldiers to make a tactical difference would require sacrificing thousands of volunteers. "There's more," Vance continued. "The process I underwent was accidental chaotic integration without proper preparation. But I've been working with Dr. Novak to refine the technique. We can increase survival rates, but only by accepting a more fundamental transformation." "What kind of transformation?" Secretary General Vasquez asked. "The successful subjects won't be entirely human anymore. Their cognitive patterns, emotional responses, even basic personality structures will incorporate Velter elements. They'll be weapons designed specifically to think like our enemy, while retaining human motivation." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Admiral Caulfield spoke. "Commander, are you asking us to deliberately create a new subspecies of humanity? I'm asking you to let me create an army that can save our species." Vance's intensity filled the room like a physical presence. The Velter conquest strategy depends on their psychological and tactical superiority. They've consumed 17 civilizations by being incomprehensibly alien. Their thought patterns, their battle doctrines, even their concept of victory is so foreign that their enemies never adapt in time. He activated the holographic display, showing detailed battle formations that seemed to shift and writhe like living organisms. "But I understand them now. I know that War Master Gorvik considers human resistance a form of entertainment away, to test new bioweapon configurations before the real conquest begins. I know that their breeding programs require specific psychological trauma patterns in their victims. I know exactly how they plan to transform Sol into a nursery for the next generation of hegemony warriors." The implication struck everyone simultaneously. This wasn't just invasion, it was genocide followed by species replacement. "How many subjects would you need?" Webb asked quietly. 500 successful integrations, deployed across our fleet, in command positions. They could coordinate our forces with the tactical precision of Velter battle groups, while maintaining human strategic creativity. Dr. Novak's calculations appear on the main display. At current survival rates, we would need approximately 42,000 volunteers. The number fell like a stone into still water, sending ripples of horror through the room. 42,000 people willing to die or be transformed beyond recognition for a chance to save humanity. "We have volunteer lists already," Vance said. "Colonial survivors, families of those killed in the outer system attacks, military personnel who've seen what the Velter do to captured worlds. People who understand that dying human is preferable to living as raw material. For alien breeding programs." Secretary General Vasquez closed her eyes. When she opened them, her expression carried the weight of species survival. "Commander, what guarantees do we have that these hybrid soldiers will remain loyal to humanity?" "None," Vance admitted, "but I can guarantee that without them, In 3 months, every human being will either be dead or serving as biological infrastructure for Veltar expansion. The question isn't whether we can trust these weapons we're creating. The question is whether we're willing to become monsters to prevent our extinction. The vote was unanimous. The Luna facility had been transformed into something that would have horrified the architects of human ethics. Rows of biointegration chambers lined sterile corridors, each containing a volunteer undergoing the neural symbiont procedure. The sounds that emerged, screaming that gradually shifted from human to something else entirely, haunted the dreams of everyone involved. Dr. Novak moved between monitoring stations, checking vitals on subjects in various stages of transformation. Chamber 47 housed Lieutenant Kara Okafor, a colonial pilot whose entire family had died on Kepler Station. Her neural patterns showed the characteristic spikes indicating successful alien integration, but her psychological profile was fragmenting. In real time, she's losing coherent speech, reported technician Anders Blomqvist. Brain activity suggests she's experiencing memories that don't belong to her. Veltar memories of orbital bombardment from the attacker's perspective. Can she still recognize human faces? Novak asked. Unknown, well, we showed her images of her dead sister. Her biometrics spiked with what appeared to be predatory satisfaction before shifting to human grief. The emotional responses are layered. Commander Vance entered the monitoring station, his own transformation now complete, enough that other staff instinctively stepped away from him. His eyes held permanent silver flecks, his movements carried an alien precision, and when he spoke, multiple vocal cords created harmonics that shouldn't exist in human anatomy. How many successful integrations? He asked. 237 viable subjects out of 8,000 volunteers, Novak reported. The survival rate is improving, but the psychological cost. Show me the failures. Reluctantly, she activated the feed from the containment ward. The volunteers who had survived the physical integration, but lost their sanity, presented a nightmare catalog of what happened when human consciousness collided with alien thought patterns. Some sat motionless, staring at nothing while their minds processed impossible geometries of Veltar spatial reasoning. Others moved in predatory patterns, hunting invisible prey while speaking in languages that hurt to hear. They're not insane, Vance observed. They're experiencing reality from a Veltar perspective, without the cognitive framework to process it. To them, the walls of their cells are probably transparent, and they're seeing the molecular structure of the building materials. Can we help them? No, but we can learn from them. He accessed the tactical planning system, integrating data from both successful and failed subjects. Every failure teaches us something about the limits of human Veltar consciousness integration. And more importantly, every successful subject gives us access to deeper levels of hegemony tactical doctrine. The main display activated, showing real-time intelligence gathered through the symbiont network. The approaching Veltar fleet had organized into their traditional conquest formation, a pattern designed to maximize psychological impact while systematically dismantling planetary defenses. They're planning to begin with the outer colonies, Vance continued. Mars, Europa. Titan will harvest the populations there to fuel bioship growth before approaching Earth. Standard hegemony doctrine. Create despair in the primary target by demonstrating absolute power over secondary targets. Admiral Caulfield's voice crackled through the secure channel. Commander, we've received confirmation that our hybrid soldiers are reading Veltar command frequencies in real time. Is this intelligence actionable? More than actionable, Admiral? We know their exact approach vectors, their command hierarchy, even which bioships are carrying breeding queens for the post-conquest phase. Vance's expression shifted to something predatory, but there's something else. The symbiont network works both ways. Our subjects aren't just receiving Veltar tactical data. They're broadcasting human responses back through the collective consciousness. Dr. Novak looked up from her displays. What kind of responses? Fear, rage, determination, but also tactical creativity, strategic improvisation, emotional bonds that the Veltar can't understand. Their collective consciousness is built around hierarchical submission and genetic programming. Human concepts like sacrifice for others, fighting against impossible odds, or choosing death over surrender, these ideas are propagating through their network like a virus. You're saying our hybrid soldiers are psychologically contaminating the enemy? I'm saying that for the first time in their species' history, the Veltar are experiencing doubt. Some of their commanders are beginning to question whether consuming humanity is tactically sound. Others are developing what they can only interpret as irrational attachments to human emotional patterns. The implications were staggering. If humanity's hybrid soldiers could create enough psychological disruption in the Velter collective consciousness, they might fragment the invasion fleet's coordination before the first shot was fired. However, Vance continued, his voice carrying new harmonics that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. We need to accelerate the program. I'm receiving intelligence through the symbiont network that suggests some Velter commanders are beginning to understand what's happening. They're developing countermeasures. What kind of countermeasures? They're planning to sever the bioneural connections entirely once they reach Sol. Fight the entire campaign using only local command structures, isolating themselves from the contamination of human consciousness. His eyes flash bright silver, which means we have exactly one opportunity to use the network against them the moment they drop out of hyperspace, and before they implement communication protocols. Dr. Novak stared at the readings from their hybrid soldiers. Commander, what you're describing would require coordinating all 237 subjects simultaneously, pushing them to maximum symbiont integration during combat. The neurological stress alone would kill most of them, yes, but it would also give us approximately 17 minutes of perfect tactical coordination with enemy command systems, 17 minutes where our fleet could fight with Velter precision while the enemy fleet fought with human desperation. The math was brutal, but clear. Sacrifice their hybrid weapons in a single, overwhelming assault, or watch humanity die slowly over months of conventional warfare they couldn't win. The Sol Defense Fleet hung in formation near Jupiter's orbit, humanity's last hope arrayed against the star field like toys before a hurricane. 8 dreadnoughts, their hulls scarred from previous encounters, led a motley collection of cruisers, destroyers, and converted civilian vessels pressed into military service. Aboard each ship, hybrid soldiers sat in neural interface chairs, their consciousness already partially merged with the approaching enemy. Commander Vance stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Caulfield's flagship, his awareness simultaneously locked into human tactical displays and the alien sensory network of the Velter fleet. Through the symbiont connection, he could feel the confidence of War Master Gorvik as the massive bioships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Contact, announced Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres from the sensor station. 17 Dreadnought-class bioships, 43 heavy cruisers, and, Christ, sir, they have breeding barges, 12 of them. The breeding barges appeared on tactical displays as massive, organic structures designed to convert captured populations into raw genetic material. Their presence confirmed intelligence reports. The Velter intended to use humanity as the foundation for their next evolutionary phase. All hybrid units, report status. Vance transmitted across the neural network. Responses flooded back in a mixture of human voices and alien harmonics. 237 transformed soldiers distributed across the fleet. Their consciousness stretched between species, their humanity slowly burning away under the strain of maintaining dual awareness. Lieutenant Okafor's voice crackled through from the destroyer Vengeance, neural integration at maximum sustainable levels. I could see their command protocols, sir. War Master Gorvik is coordinating through bioneural pulses across 7 frequency bands. Copy. All units, prepare for integration burn. You know what this means. A moment of silence across the network as the hybrid soldiers acknowledged their death sentences. Maximum neural integration would give them perfect tactical coordination for perhaps 20 minutes. Before their brains were destroyed by the alien patterns, Admiral Caulfield stood beside Vance, his expression grim. Commander, give me something to work with. Velter battle doctrine relies on bioship regeneration. They'll advance in waves, absorbing damage while their living hulls repair themselves faster than we can inflict it. But Vance's eyes flashed silver as he accessed deeper levels of enemy tactical data. They're vulnerable during regeneration cycles. 7-second windows when their defensive systems are offline. 7 seconds isn't enough to. It is if every ship in our fleet fires simultaneously at predetermined target points. The hybrid network was already calculating firing solutions within human precision. Admiral, in 30 seconds, I'm going to give you 17 targets. When I do, every ship needs to fire everything: kinetic rounds, energy weapons, nuclear warheads, everything. The Velter fleet began its approach, bioships pulsing with organic light as they prepared their weapons. The lead dreadnought Gorvak's flagship broadcast surrender demands in 17 different languages. promising swift death for those who submitted immediately. Hybrid network. Initiate integration burn. Now, across the fleet, 237 human minds open completely to alien consciousness. The psychological strain was immediate and devastating. Lieutenant Okafor screamed as Velter spatial reasoning flooded her awareness, showing her the molecular structure of her own ship. Sergeant Major Liu Feng convulsed as enemy battle memories replaced his own, forcing him to experience human deaths from the attacker's perspective. But the tactical data was perfect. Firing solutions online, Vance announced, his voice now carrying alien harmonics. Target designations coming through now. All ships, weapons free in 3 to mark. The sole defense fleet fired as one, coordinated with impossible precision. Kinetic rounds struck bioship vulnerable points just as their regeneration cycles created momentary gaps in defensive screens. Nuclear warheads detonated inside organic hulls, preventing the rapid healing that made Velter's ships nearly invulnerable. 4. Enemy cruisers died instantly, their bioneural systems catastrophically disrupted. The lead dreadnought staggered as its regeneration matrix overloaded, organic armor boiling away under concentrated fire. But the Velter response was swift and brutal. Enemy weapons bioplasma cannons that fired concentrated stellar matter lanced across space with targeting accuracy that defied physics. The destroyer Manchester died first, its hull vaporized by weapons that converted matter directly to energy. The cruiser Defiant followed seconds later, its crew incinerated before they could even scream. Hybrid network status. Caulfield demanded. 17 subjects dead from neural overload. Vance reported, his own consciousness fragmenting under the strain. Remaining units are maintaining coordination, but we're losing them fast. The battle devolved into a nightmare of impossible physics and dying screams. Velter bioships regenerated damage almost as quickly as human weapons could inflict it, while their return fire punched through conventional shields like they were paper. The UES Churchill exploded in a ball of plasma, taking 800 crew members with it. The heavy cruiser Moscow limped away with her forward sections completely gone, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. But the hybrid soldiers were making a difference. Every Velter ship that fired found itself targeted by impossible accurate return volleys, guided by soldiers who could see through enemy sensors and predict tactical movements before they happened. Lieutenant Okafor, her consciousness, now more alien than human, guided the Vengeance through a suicidal attack run that put her ship inside the defensive perimeter of a Velter breeding barge. Her final transmission was barely recognizable as human speech. Target the Queen Chambers. Now, the destroyers. Nuclear warheads detonated inside the massive bioship, destroying genetic banks that represented millions of years of hegemony evolution. The explosion was visible from Earth, a brief star that signaled the death of both ship and the transformed woman who had guided it. Sir, Torres reported from her station. We've lost contact with 60% of our hybrid soldiers. The ones still online are, she paused, checking readings that shouldn't be possible. Sir, they're not reading as entirely human anymore. Through the neural network, Vance could feel his transformed soldiers dying one by one, their consciousness burned away by alien patterns their brains couldn't sustain. But each death gave the survivors access to deeper levels of Velter tactical doctrine. Admiral, he said, his voice now carrying harmonics that made the bridge crew wince. I can give you one more coordinated strike, but after this, the hybrid network will be gone. The cost was visible across the fleet. Humanity's greatest technological achievement was literally killing the people who made it possible. But as the Velter formation began to reorganize, their own casualties mounting, it was clear that the sacrifice was working. The neural network was collapsing. Of the original 237 hybrid soldiers, only 43 remained conscious. Their minds stretched beyond human limits as they maintained impossible tactical coordination. Commander Vance felt each death like a physical blow. Lieutenant Chen dissolving into screaming madness as Velter spatial perception shattered his sanity. Sergeant Volkov's consciousness simply ceasing as alien memories overrode her identity entirely. But the sacrifice was working. The Velter fleet, which had approached Seoul with the confident precision of apex predators, now moved with hesitant, almost defensive formations. For the first time in their species' history, they were fighting an enemy that could predict their tactics, counter their movements, and coordinate attacks with their own supernatural accuracy. War Master Gorvak's furious commands echoed through the bioneural network. A mixture of rage and something the Velter had never experienced before, uncertainty. The human emotional patterns flooding through the symbiont connections were contaminating his warrior's strategic thinking, introducing concepts like sacrifice, desperation, and fighting against impossible odds. Status report, Admiral Caulfield. Demanded, his flagship shuddering under enemy fire, 7 enemy dreadnoughts destroyed or disabled. Report of Lieutenant Commander Torres. But we've lost the Manchester, Churchill, Moscow, Defiant. And she paused as another explosion lit up the tactical display. The Stockholm just took a direct hit to her reactor core. The numbers were brutal, but encouraging. Humanity was losing ships faster than they could afford, but the Velter were losing ships they thought were invulnerable. The biocruiser regeneration that had made them unstoppable against other species was failing under precisely coordinated attacks. Guided by their own tactical doctrines, Vance, his consciousness now split between human determination and alien strategic awareness, accessed the deepest levels of the neural network. What he found there made his hybrid nature recoil in horror. Admiral, they're implementing the cleansing protocol, he announced, his voice carrying harmonics that made everyone on the bridge uncomfortable. It's a last resort tactical doctrine, designed to prevent psychological contamination from conquered species. What does that mean? They're going to sever all bioneural connections and fight using only local command structures. But first, Vance's expression twisted with inherited memories. They're going to execute every Velter warrior who has been exposed to human consciousness patterns. The implication struck everyone simultaneously. The enemy fleet was about to murder its own soldiers to prevent the spread of human psychological patterns. How many of their warriors are affected? Through the network, Vance could sense the scope of the contamination. 3 months of hybrid soldier connections had exposed thousands of Velter to human emotional patterns, strategic thinking, and most dangerously, the concept of individual choice over genetic programming. Approximately 40% of their fleet personnel show signs of human psychological contamination. War Master Gorvik is ordering immediate termination to prevent the spread. The Velter fleet began to change formation, bioships clustering around mobile execution platforms. Through the failing neural network, the remaining hybrid soldiers could sense the horror as thousands of alien warriors were systematically killed by their own command structure punishment for the crime of thinking like humans. Sir, Torres announced, we're detecting massive internal explosions across their fleet. They're killing their own people. But the executions had an unexpected effect as thousands of contaminated Velter died. Their final thoughts and emotions flooded through the bioneural network in a cascade of alien despair, confusion, and for the first time in their species history, outright rebellion. Some bioships began firing on their own fleet as crews refused to submit to execution. Others simply stopped responding to commands as their warriors experienced human concepts like mutiny and self-determination. The perfect coordination that had made the Velter unstoppable across 17 star systems began to fracture. This is our chance, Vance said, his consciousness now burning away under the strain of maximum neural integration. The network is collapsing, but I can give you one final coordinated attack. Every remaining hybrid soldier, full integration burn, targeting their command ship. Commander, that will kill everyone still connected to the network. Yes, sir, but it will also give us targeting data for War Master Gorvak's personal vessel. Take out their supreme commander while their fleet is in chaos, and we can break their entire invasion. The 43 remaining hybrid soldiers acknowledged the order across the failing network. These were humanity's best pilots, soldiers, scientists who had voluntarily transformed themselves into weapons to save their species. Now they were preparing to die to ensure that sacrifice meant something. All ships, Admiral Caulfield broadcast across the fleet, concentrate all firepower on target designation Alpha Prime on my mark. This is for every human who died on Kepler Station, Proxima Colony, and every other world these bastards have destroyed. The final integration burn began. Across the fleet, 43 transformed minds opened completely to alien consciousness, their humanity dissolving under patterns no human brain could sustain. Lieutenant Okafor, barely recognizable as the woman who had volunteered months ago, transmitted final targeting coordinates even as her neural patterns disintegrated. Sergeant Wong, his consciousness now a hybrid of human rage and alien tactical precision, Guided torpedo volleys through defensive screens that should have been impenetrable. One by one, they died not as humans, but as something new, something forged in the crucible of species survival and alien integration. Their sacrifice gave the sole defense fleet 17 seconds of perfect tactical coordination. 17 seconds where human weapons fired with the precision of gods. War Master, Gorvak's bioship, the Fist of Extinction, died under concentrated fire that struck every vulnerable point simultaneously. The massive vessel, alive for over 3 centuries and veteran of countless conquests, screamed across electromagnetic spectrums as its organic hull was systematically destroyed by weapons guided by its own tactical doctrines. The explosion, when it came, was visible from Mars, with their supreme commander dead and their fleet in chaos from the psychological contamination and internal executions. The remaining Vulture ships began to withdraw. Some fled immediately, their crews overcome by human concepts like fear and self-preservation. Others fought desperate rearguard actions as crews who had experienced individual choice refused to abandon their positions. Commander Vance collapsed as the neural network finally died, taking the last of his hybrid soldiers with it. His consciousness, stretched between species for months, began the agonizing process of becoming fully human again, if that was even possible. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Commander Jorg Vance stood in the Memorial Garden on Luna, reading names carved into black stone. 4,372 volunteers had undergone the hybrid transformation. Only 17 had survived the final neural integration burn, and of those, only Vance retained anything resembling human consciousness. The physical changes were permanent. His eyes held flecks of silver that seemed to shift in certain light. His voice carried harmonics that made recording equipment malfunction, and his spatial reasoning operated on levels that hurt other people to contemplate. Dr. Novak had classified him as a new subspecies, Homo sapiens post-integra, humanity's first successful fusion with alien consciousness. The psychological evaluations are complete, she said, joining him among the memorial stones. You're stable, functional, and still recognizably human in your core personality structure. But Jorik, you're not the same person who survived Kepler. Station, Vance nodded, his gaze fixed on Lieutenant Okafor's name. None of us are the same. The question is whether what we became was worth what we sacrificed. The answer lay scattered across the solar system. The Velter fleet had retreated in complete disarray, the first time in their recorded history that a conquest had failed. More importantly, the psychological contamination had spread beyond the soul system. Reports from Deep Space Monitoring stations indicated that hegemony forces across 3 sectors were experiencing unprecedented levels of internal conflict. The Xenop psychology reports are fascinating, Dr. Novak continued. The Velter collective consciousness was built around absolute hierarchical obedience and genetic determinism. Human concepts like individual choice, sacrifice for others, fighting against impossible odds, these ideas are propagating through their bioneural networks like an ideological virus, meaning that for the first time in their species evolution, individual Velter are choosing to disobey orders, questioning their genetic programming, even sacrificing themselves for concepts that don't benefit the hegemony. It's causing cascade failures in their entire social structure. Admiral Caulfield approached through the Memorial Garden, his expression carrying the weight of victory achieved through unthinkable sacrifice. Behind him walked representatives from every human colony, military branch, and civilian government, the people who would now have to decide humanity's future. Commander, Caulfield said formally, the Joint Chiefs have reached a decision regarding the Hybrid Warrior Project. Vance turned, his silver-flecked eyes reflecting the light of Earth rising over Luna's horizon, and the program is being classified beyond Black level. All records sealed. All research terminated. All surviving subjects. He paused, studying Vance's transformed features. All surviving subjects are being offered a choice. What kind of choice? Secretary General Vasquez stepped forward. We can attempt to reverse the neural integration. Dr. Novak believes there's a 70% chance of restoring fully human consciousness, though the process would be difficult. And the alternative, we've established a new division within Strategic Command, the Xenological Warfare Department. Its mission is to study alien psychology, develop countermeasures for non-human tactical doctrines, and prepare humanity for future encounters with hostile species. Caulfield's expression was grave. The department would be staffed by volunteers with direct experience of alien consciousness integration. The offer hung in the air like a challenge: return to being human with all the limitations that implied, or remain transformed, forever changed, forever isolated, forever carrying the weight of alien awareness. How many other survivors are accepting the position? All 16. Dr. Novak replied. They found that human consciousness alone feels incomplete now. The tactical awareness, the spatial reasoning, even the emotional complexity of hybrid cognition, they can't give it up. Vance looked back at the memorial wall, at the names of people who had sacrificed everything to save humanity. Lieutenant Okafor, who had guided her ship into the heart of an enemy-breeding barge. Sergeant Wong, who had died coordinating torpedo strikes with inhuman precision. Thousands of volunteers who had known the transformation would likely kill them but had undergone it anyway. There's something else, he said quietly. The neural network isn't completely gone. Sometimes, late at night, I can still sense echoes, fragments of Velter consciousness that are still connected to human awareness. What do you mean? I mean that some of their warriors are still carrying human psychological patterns, and some of them are beginning to act on human moral concepts. His voice carried a mixture of satisfaction and alien harmonics. The contamination is spreading. Dr. Novak, in 10 years, 20 years, the Velter hegemony might not exist as a unified threat. Their entire species might fracture as more individuals choose human concepts, like freedom over genetic programming. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just defeated an invasion. They had infected their enemies with the fundamental concepts that made humans dangerous. The willingness to fight against impossible odds, to sacrifice for others, to choose individual conscience over collective obedience. Commander, Secretary General Vasquez said, "What do you think the long-term consequences will be?" Vance smiled, and for a moment it was purely human, tired, sad, but determined. "I think humanity just took its first step toward becoming something larger than a single species. The neural integration didn't just give us access to Velter consciousness. It gave them access to ours, and human consciousness, once experienced, is impossible to forget." He accepted the position. With the Xenological Warfare Department, as did the other 16 survivors, they would spend their remaining years preparing humanity for future encounters with hostile species, using their unique perspective to develop strategies that conventional human minds couldn't conceive. But more importantly, they would serve as living proof that humanity could adapt, evolve, and survive encounters with forces that should have destroyed them. They had become something new, not quite human, not quite alien, but entirely committed to ensuring that humanity would never again face extinction unprepared. The memorial garden fell quiet as the officials departed, leaving Vance alone with the names of the dead. In the distance, Earth rose over Luna's horizon, blue and white and beautiful, a world that had come within months of becoming a breeding ground for alien warriors. Instead, it had become the birthplace of something unprecedented: humans who carried alien consciousness, aliens who carried human ideals, and a galaxy where the concept of inevitable conquest had died along with War Master Gorvik. The Velter had wanted to harvest humanity's neural patterns to create better weapons. Instead, they had given humanity the tools to transform the galaxy itself, one contaminated consciousness at a time. As Vance walked away from the memorial, his footsteps echoing with inhuman precision, his eyes carrying light that belonged to no single species, he carried with him the satisfaction of perfect poetic justice. The enemies who had sought to consume humanity had instead become the vectors through which human consciousness would spread across the stars. The massacre on Kepler Station had been intended to break humanity's spirit. Instead, it had forged weapons that would remake the galaxy in humanity's image, one transformed mind at a time.